Before we begin, thank you very much to ZZ for joining my Patreon campaign. Very appreciated. Thank you so much for the support. I say it literally every video, but it is true. I don't want it to lose meaning when I say it does keep the channel afloat. It does keep me doing this every single day, so thank you very much for allowing me to continue to do this. As a quick update, I do now have enough shoutouts to get me through the Metrocon hiatus. The delivery is still going to be a little weird because of the videos are already pre-recorded. I'm going to tack the thank yous on at the beginning. So the presentation's a little weird, but everyone still gets their shout-outs. So thank you for keeping the streak alive while I'm gone. And I've got just enough to make it through the streak. So hopefully there's a few more waiting on Monday so we can keep it rolling. Because you guys like the streak. You guys don't want me to use my intro. So I guess we're going to keep doing that. Okay, so I hit a weird mood today where I kind of started looking at, there's a few characters that I've been wanting to talk about for a while now, but I couldn't really figure out a format or a topic that would actually allow me to do it. So today we're just going to go for it. Over the years, because of the nature of Transformers and the way it reuses molds, the way it's marketed across the world, you end up with a lot of copycats. A lot of characters who are designed specifically to look like other characters, either by intentional design or just because the mold happens to require that in one way or another. So we have a lot of people who imitate other Transformer characters. And I don't just mean Starscream and his infinite reign of Seekers. I mean specific iconic visuals being aped by other characters, or just straight up looking like them, going by a different name. If you want a nice example of it, Generation 2 has quite a few in that weird in-between of Generation, like late Euro G1 and early US G2. A lot of weirdness goes on in that area. But today we're going to focus in on two specific characters, Optimus Prime and Megatron, both who have their own copycats in various different ways. I'm going to try and avoid repaints that are just them as somebody else. We're going to try and keep it to relevant ones, but we'll stray here and there just to cover all of our bases. And for note, we're going to try and stick to ones that have like actual proper representations. So there's a few that we'll probably skip out on for that reason as well. We're also going to skip a lot of Nemesis Primes, by the way, because most of them are depicted as a different character who is just designed to look like an evil Optimus Prime. The one we include is the one from Transformers Prime, designed by Mech and piloted by a human. It is designed specifically to be an impersonation of Optimus Prime. Now, it does have a toy in the Prime toy line in Japan, but it's more the standard traditional black and metallic teal of, your black convoys, RID Scourge, etc. So it falls into this fictionally, but toy-wise, we never really got a proper, just worn-out looking Optimus Prime to stand in as Nemesis. Does technically count, though, but that's probably the only iteration of Nemesis that really qualifies for this because it was literally trying to impersonate Optimus Prime. And we're leaving out things in fiction, like clones, for instance. There's a bunch of them running around, too. The most famous impersonator is probably Jinri, who in America is not an impersonator. It's Power Master Optimus Prime. It's the first time that an old character got a brand new toy. So here it's not so confusing. In Japan, yes, it's very strange and confusing. I'm going to presume that the intention behind the original toy and its creation was that America wanted a new Optimus Prime toy. Japan didn't want to meddle with the fiction, so they had to work it in. And Japan's great at working really crazy things into their fiction. So this is from Master Force. And in Master Force, the Autobots are transtectors, or there are transtectors amongst the Autobot crew. These were basically blank bodies that were captured by a creature named Devil Z and spread across the globe to seed them with whatever weird energy Earth has that they described in the series. The intention was to eventually wake these things up in the modern times as God Masters, supremely powerful Transformers under his control. but they fell under human control after a while. As humans started finding them and digging them up. And the one that was originally designed to be a body for Optimus Prime ends up being found by a human named Jinri. At the end of Master Force, all of the Transtectors develop their own sentient life, so they separate from their human counterparts, which means Jinri ends up taking the name of his human while still having the overall image of Optimus Prime. So it's a weird, convoluted story. It's a very weird, convoluted story, but that's what Japan does best, right? So that's Jinri. He might be worth a whole video in and of himself someday. But for now, let's move on to someone else we've talked about recently. So it might just look like Optimus Prime with his Pepsi decals. No. This is intentionally a different character. Pepsi Convoy is intended to be a completely different character from Optimus Prime / Convoy in Japan. His sole purpose is to deliver Pepsi to thirsty people around the galaxy. I'm not kidding. That's literally his fiction. I don't know how he's drinking that bottle of Pepsi either with no mouth and without a stomach, but here we go. It's fun. It's just a fun one. And it's weird what they were willing to do with promotions. It's weird they didn't just name it Convoy. You know, it's weird that it's just like literally like a duplication of Optimus Prime just to deliver carbonated sugar water. But hey, I'm not going to begrudge them for their promotional intentions. This is the company who made Pepsi Man, after all. These two, Pepsi Man and this Prime, made with the same stuff fictionally, by the way. So Japan is great at working in little clone characters like this. So one of the things I love that Japan did was they created a Prime for different towns and areas of Japan. And this is a fantastic little fun promotion called Cybertron Satellite. So the town commanders all are based on existing toys that have been redesigned and repurposed and then thusly renamed to be representative of each different area of Japan that they represent. This is Ginza Prime, excuse me, obviously using the movie Prime as a base. And then we have Sapporo Prime, using animated Optimus Prime as his base. And then we have Sapporo Chuo, who's using Robots in Disguise Prime. The weird thing about this is that generally these are designed after the Little Legion class toys, because I believe some of them were available as such. I don't think all of them had toys, though. I think mostly it's just designs representing the different areas, which is fun. I mean, it's a whole interesting thing that you'd never see them do here in America. So it's fun. It's fun for me to see like weird little promotional things like that. And I think it's cool to have in a specific area of Japan and like you got to have your own Prime. You know, that's kind of neat. And if you got one that looked like Optimus or a cool character, that's fine. If you got the one that looks like a yellow Revenge of the Fallen Jetfire, that's a little bit disappointing. It is a strange beast, these, by the way, when you start looking it up. There's one based on an Air Viacon from Prime. Kind of weird. So the strangest one for Optimus Prime is going to be this guy. And you would think, oh, it's Combat Hero Optimus Prime from G2. Like, that's the same character. What are you doing? No. This is the European version. This is Sure Shot. And you might be wondering why a G2 version of Optimus Prime is stealing a G1 Autobot's name. So, US and UK, rather, had different ideas for marketing back in the day. In the US, they didn't mind. Like, Hasbro was just starting to get behind the idea of providing these smaller, less expensive versions of popular characters that kids could more easily afford. Meanwhile, in the UK, the marketing mindset was, we want top dollar for Optimus Prime. So if you want the character of Transformers, you gotta pay for the big toy. So in order to avoid that kind of confusion, they renamed the combat, hero characters, and this is Sure Shot as a result. The toy is almost exactly identical, by the way. So Don't expect anything different about it other than they took the name Optimus Prime off of some of his stickers. It is just a fascinating way of like approaching the separation of marketing strategies. If you want character, there's very little. There's a brief little bio. It doesn't even have tech specs. Mostly just describes war as a problem, not a solution. So, big missile wielding Optimus Prime, who's supposed to be the ultimate protector, but hates war. All right, so understandable. It's a little bit of a little bit of a contradiction, but understandable. Peacekeeper character. All right. So let's move into Megatron now, because Megatron has his own impersonators all over the place as well. We can start with the easiest places. Megastorm from Beast Wars 2 is probably the most obvious one. It's a reuse of the G2 Megatron mold. Straight up, as simple as that. Slight paint differences, though. Just slight paint differences to make it look a little bit more palatable as like a normal tank. They took away the purple on the camo and turned it olive green, so looks a little bit more normal. Nevertheless, Beast Wars 2 was a beast versus machine concept where the Maximal side, the Beast, got to use a whole bunch of the Beast Wars toys that never came out in Japan prior, as opposed to the Predacon side, which is using a whole bunch of G2 / Machine Wars toys that never came out in America, that never came out in Japan. So you're getting this weird mix of the two, and you can see it's just like they made an entire franchise off of recycling molds that were conveniently not released in Japan yet. It does lead to some weirdness. But some of the Beast Wars 2 stuff is fun. Yeah, and eventually this one would get upgraded into a imitation of Trypticon. So, unfortunately for Megastorm, hard for him to find his own identity. When he pretty much acts as the Starscream of the series in character, yeah, he really doesn't have a whole lot of identity of his own. He is a fake Megatron pulling, like grade school level stuff Starscream wouldn't even try. That's kind of the characterization. So, unfortunately, not a whole lot to him. See, we've also talked about this one, which is Megaplex from Machine Wars. We've discussed this toy multiple times already. Yeah, I mean, I still find it to be an underutilized character. Go watch my video on that. Suffice to say, he is a body double character, which is kind of a cheeky way for Hasbro to say, we needed more Decepticons for this toy line, but we didn't have enough molds lying around to use for cheap. So we ran Megatron twice, once in gray, once in blue, and then swapped their parts around to create these two different characters. So thus you have Megaplex. Because that really is what it feels like. It's really what it feels like. So yeah, he's just a body double. He's a stand-in, which I know is a real-world thing, but it also feels kind of like out of character for Megatron. The fun thing about the Megaplex mold, however, is the fact that, yeah, it is very overtly Megatron in head sculpt, which means all the subsequent reuses of it through RID, Robot Masters, and yes, Beast Wars 2, make the characters basically recolored Megatrons. They all just kind of look like Megatrons no matter what you do to them. So it's a little bit, it's always a little bit weird and funny. It's funny watching Thrust in Beast Wars 2 because there's the animators, they're trying not to make it look like Megatron, or in this case, to look too much like Megastorm in the same scenes. But there's really no avoiding it sometimes. There's another impersonator. There's another Transformer character that is ripping off the design and image of Megatron, and unfortunately, that means we've got to talk Kiss players. Which noticed I've had to censor a little bit of Legion here. There's really no polite way of talking about Kiss players. Also, there's no nice picture of Legion. There's just none. So this is about my only alternative. So you want to talk like the way Japan creates these crazy fictions to explain things. So when Unicron is destroyed in 2005, his destruction spreads Galvatron particles across the galaxy and all the way to Earth. How these particles manage to get flung all the way through the vastness of space from Cybertron all the way to the planet Earth is beyond me, but that's how the story goes. Because this Galvatron energy apparently possesses just a little bit of that Megatron still in it, when it possesses cars and different machines here on Earth, they come up bearing Megatron's face when they take robot mode. And thus you have Legion, this really disgusting, gross band of whatever they are. Yeah, and mostly they're going to use those Wind Charger bodies, but not always. They just always look like Megatron. The entire crew of them looks like Megatron, which makes the whole thing even more gross than it already is. But we have to cover it, because, hey, otherwise I'd just be the comment section going, where's Legion? You don't want to know. You really don't want to know. Probably in a prison somewhere. Alright, it's not just the G1 Megatron that does get swapped in once in a while. We also have oh man, I'm tongue twisted now. Thanks, Legion. I blame you. This is Megabolt, and I include him because we went from Beast Machine's Megatron to Megatron Megabolt in RID, and then this exclusive during the Armada time, which is just Megabolt. And yeah, just unequivocally just a Cryotech-esque knockoff of Megatron, bearing half of his name, or in one case, in either way you view it, it's half of Megatron's name. This is weird. This is weird. There's some fiction that describes him as a lifeless husk brought to life by Geoxys' schemes. Another one represents him as a Unicron Herald-esque character that brings destruction in his wake. A character who could either be a destroyer who just wipes out a planet upon arrival, or could potentially be a politician who could weasel his way into society and into the hierarchy of the planet before taking it apart from the inside out. Apparently, the characterization is that he assimilates all the information of the planets he conquers, meaning he's incredibly intelligent as well as incredibly powerful, which does seem like a Megatron of that era, but it also makes for a very weird character who just happens to look like the Decepticon leader. Alright, you ready for the flip side of Sure Shot? Here you go. So yes, once again, you could look at this and go, alright, so we've got combat hero Megatron. No, we do not. We have Archforce, who is about as generic as a big, powerful Decepticon villain gets. Again, very little bio, very little info, no fictional history. Well, there is. He was part of a scheme to get back in control of the Decepticons by Straxus, I believe. Weird fiction. Either way, Archforce kind of forced to be a Megatron for the same reasons that Sure Shot was. You know, if you want Megatron, pay for the bigger toy. But there are other uses. So here's one that imitates both, technically, depending on how you view it. Reverse Convoy is also Rebirth Megatron, and his fiction is crazier than I thought. See, I've been, this whole time, I kind of thought Rebirth Megatron was the real bot, and Reverse Convoy was just a very obvious disguise. No. So here's the crazy Japanese fiction of it. Reverse Convoy is in that same pantheon as Fire Convoy, Galaxy Convoy, Big Convoy, etc., etc. That whole pantheon of convoys that they had at the same, roughly the same time in Japanese fiction. All of that he was part of. So, and he's described as like a far more calm version, like more calm than some of the other convoys. So, and more focused on energy gathering than fighting off Predacons, who were his enemies at the time, and a minor threat compared to the energy crisis. Solved the energy crisis, almost wound up in a fight, almost died, and then because he was linked to a black hole, the same way Megatron was, a disembodied Megatron finds his way into that body, reconverts it to have like his own head, and uses it as to impersonate a convoy and rejoins the fight during Robot Masters. Reverse Convoy does eventually get replaced and like gets to take his body back. So he is technically an Autobot who is intentionally designed to look like Optimus Prime, like many of the convoys. But he becomes an impersonation when a completely different Megatron takes him over, which makes him an impersonation of Megatron too. So if we're going to talk about someone who's both Megatron and Optimus Prime, we have to finish off with Giltar. So this is one of the originals. This is probably the original fake Optimus Prime, if we exclude clones, right? So it's a robot built by the Quintessons, who fell amongst the Decepticons and rose up in their ranks very quickly because of his combat skills, to the point where Galvatron brought him solely to ambush Rodimus Prime. Obviously, this doesn't work out in Decepticon culture, so Giltar eventually does turn on Galvatron, tries to take over the Decepticons himself, forces a team up between Rodimus and Galvatron, a team up that ends with the two delivering a double rider kick to Giltar. No, I am not kidding. That is what happens in this book, because that's Japanese heroism. Yeah, and then when it's destroyed, the Soul of Starscream comes out. All right, Japanese fiction, you got me. You win the Weird Award again, for the 80th consecutive year. So yeah, funny how that kind of works. But yeah, that's just a sampling. I mean, there's plenty of these characters, either through repaint or through intentional design, that imitate one of the classic Transformers. I mean, I could go on. Like, this is just me focusing on Optimus and Megatron. There's duplicates of Bumblebee. There's duplicates of Starscream. They're all over the place, and we could do this again. But that might be saved for a better format and a better time. For now, I'm gonna leave it there. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.
I'm like, I think you guys got this. I will back away, and I will see you all later.
You've got this handled.
Alaffi's like, really? You're not gonna help me? Like, it's fine now.
It's like these disgusting creatures breathing down my neck, and you're all just like, I believe in you. You got this.
All right, you seem to have this. 5 minutes.